OK, now we've all been familiar with that term baby boom. Well, nearly half the countries in the world are facing what's being described as a baby bust. Now that means they're having insufficient children to maintain their population size. This comes from a new report out today in the journal The Lancet, which finds that there's been a remarkable global decline in the number of children that women are having. Let's get some detail on that, because our reporter Katie Silver has been looking at the article in The Lancet and working it out. More than half the countries in the world. I mean, that's big, Katie.
It's huge. So as you say, remarkable decline. Even the researchers who specialise in this topic were shocked by the results. And they say we're heading to a point where perhaps grandchildren may outnumber grandparents. It's a really big issue. So David, what they did is they looked at the data from 1950 to 2017. Basically, in 1950, your average woman was having 4.7 children. Just less than 70 years later, they're having about 2.4 children on average. And as you say, that is less than the replacement rate. So you need...
The replacement rate is what, then?
2.1 to 2.2.
Right.
But, for example, in countries that have higher rates of child mortality, they also need to have slightly more than this 2.1, 2.2 number. So back in 1950, 0 countries had this problem. Now, as you say, about half the world's countries facing it.
It's interesting, because it's the sort of thing that the Western world, Western Europe in particular, has been familiar with for a long time. It feels like there's a bit of an explosion going on here in other parts of the world. But what do they put it down to? Right,
so yes, as you say, across Europe, no country is actually having enough children. Australia, it's a big problem, the US, even parts of, for example, developed economies in Asia, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, huge issues there. They put it down to, in part, women's education growing, so the opportunity cost of them going out of the workforce and having more children is higher. Women who are having children are having less, so they're having more like 1 or 2 rather than 3, 4 or 5. There's a number of, a multitude of reasons. Again, child-friendly policies, so for instance, if, both culturally and if the policies aren't effective for women to, return to the workforce, there's again a huge opportunity cost in having children, and people putting it off till later.
There is this sort of, it's a contradiction, isn't it, that we worry so much about the explosion of the human population on the planet, and then as soon as there's a story like this comes out, there's another very good reason to worry.
It's a real concern, because what it's going to do is it's going to push the age in which we can retire later and later. So, for example, here in the UK, it's 68 now. But if you don't have the growing labour force in order to pay for people to retire, people are going to be working longer, expected to be productive longer, and we're living longer. So it's sort of a catch-22 where all the factors combine to quite a drastic circumstance, David.
OK, Katie, thanks very much for that.